Welcome to the Crafty Mini, and in this one, while I was painting up some of these deathguard for a little force that I'm working on for 40k and some other rule sets, a question kept hitting around my head when it came to picking out and designing the colour scheme, and it's, you know, what do you want, what do you need from an army when it comes to painting them? Now, I can paint to a pretty decent level, especially when I'm doing individual things and busts and whatnot. But when I want to get an army out quickly, I don't really want to spend that kind of time on each of these individual miniatures, especially if you had a big like horde type army as well. It's going to take you a long time. So what I decided to do is I was looking at other things, other armies from various games across the internet, and just looking at what were the key factors that made these armies look good. Now, with the images that will be popping up while I'm speaking, you can see there's various different paint styles, different levels and things like that. Some of them are professional, others you know, someone just painted them, but the key thing I took away from it is it's the colour. The colour's got a pop, and when they're all together, when your army's together and they've all got those 2 or 3 colours, they all amalgamate together and it looks better. It looks more impressive. The paint scheme really does pop on the battlefield, and it looks cohesive, and it's all part of the same group, faction, race, whatever it might be, whatever army you're working on. And you can see in some of the examples we've got, like, you know, there's a universal colour that runs through. There's certain accent colours that every unit has. It could even be something simple that the colours match those of like unit flags or banners and things, and they all sort of come together and make this cohesive force that when it is all on the battlefield, it looks amazing. And I would argue the paint job looks better than perhaps you've actually put your effort into. Certainly for myself anyway, because I enjoy painting, but as I said, when it comes to the actual doing a force, I don't want to be spending 5-6 hours per miniature, and that's what this video is going to look into. So my first paint job for this army, it did take me a while, but once I got through it and I figured out the process and the colour scheme and where I wanted to concentrate on for those accent colours, or, you know, areas that I want to pop more, and so when it's all, again, when the force is all together, it looks more cohesive. And that's what I decided here. So I'll go through the actual painting process in a second, but before we start, I just think it's an interesting sort of thought experiment with, you know, when you see these armies, whether they're professional or not painted, you know, they look really impressive when they're all there, especially games, rank and file games in particular. They look really good. They all look like they're part of the same force, that there's like a narrative running through. You know, they've all, whether it's like they're battle damaged, or, you know, you can just tell that they're all part of that singular force, and it just looks more impressive. There are also arguments for things like tabletop standard and whatnot, and, you know, do you have to go and paint all the minute little details and things on a miniature? And that's the personal preference up to the painter, really. It's if you want to spend all that extra time. I like to, but only on like display pieces or busts or larger scales, or for those who've seen some of the dioramas I've done recently as well. But for me, it was more looking at these pictures. It was right, I want an army that when it's out, you know that they're all part of the same group, so that, you know, it feels like a faction, it looks like a faction. And so what I decided through the painting process, I came across this idea of, so we're going to do, so with it being deathguard, I don't want to do green, I don't want to do what's on the box art and things, for a couple of reasons. One, it's alright, I don't think it's the best colour scheme for them. 2, I want to lean into more of that pre-heresy era with them. And 3, a big thing for me is, if I paint something similar to the box art, I personally I struggle, because I'll keep referring back to it, and because I keep seeing this very professional piece painted that's edge highlighted up to the kazoo and all these minute details and things. I then keep comparing my paint job to it, and then I get disillusioned, and then I lose interest, and then I end up going for something else. It's one of the reasons why I love painting busts and individual miniatures. However, so with this, so I made a point of, so my sort of remit was, don't copy the box art. Go for pre-heresy sort of colour schemes, and just try something new and have an accent colour that pops. So I knew I wanted this sort of dusky sort of white colour. The accent colour, purely by accident, turned out to be orange because it was originally on the basis when I did the first miniature, and I thought, oh, actually that works, so we can use that for like plasma coils, any small little bits of detail that I want to pop a bit more. The orange is a really nice contrast to that sort of beigey white. No greens at all on there, excluding base, but nothing on the armour to make it look like traditional deathguard. And then I wanted to grind them up, so I've done some of you might have seen the short I did of Mortari in the 30k. That I really enjoyed, and I did a lot more practice with like dirty down rust and verdigris and things. So I've used what I've learnt there in this army to make a really simple paint job. So what we're going to do now is go and look at how quickly I actually knock these miniatures up, because it is really easy. It's a simple test, and then you'll see what I've got painted so far all together at the end, and you can see if you think it looks more cohesive and looks, you know, looks like it's gonna, it does what it says on the thing. It's an army, it's all part of one group. Personally, I'm very happy with them. The kit bashing and things I've done as well to make them look a bit bulkier, a bit meaner. I think that all adds to the narrative and the style of whatever force for whatever army you're looking for. Right, so for the Pale Death then, so this was the first miniature I painted. I have spent a bit more time on this particular one compared to the rest, but that was more for me figuring out the paint schemes. Now, as I mentioned, so gone for the more beige sort of colours, and picking out with the brush and things, and this is another example here, and silver trim as opposed to bronze. That's the main one I want. It's a bit not as warm in the sort of accent colours, because I want the silver to pop more, and it makes the orange pop a little bit more as well. And they're all grimed up, and as I say, you'll see at the end after how I painted them, and you'll see they do all marry up together. Now, a couple of things to note before we start. So these are Plague Marines with a few kit bashing, so 30k heads and shoulder pads and backpacks. This is because I want the heads are a bit smaller and I want them to look a bit bigger and a bit sort of chunkier, and I prefer leaning into that 30k era instead. And then at the base, all the bases on every miniature has had these pine bark chips put on, just to make them stand a bit taller, because the Plague Marines are the old size Marines compared to like the current Primaris stuff. So I want them to look a bit more bigger, you know, a bit taller, a bit more imposing. Now for the actual paint job itself, so I've started off undercoating them all, base coating all of them in an ivory rattle can. I've then washed that down with some Agrax Earthshade, and that gets you to the point that it's at now. What I did in some of the armour panels, especially the shoulder pads, is I went back over with an ivory colour just to make them pop a little bit more, and it just makes all the recesses a little bit darker and makes everything just stand out that bit more. And then from there we're going to start working on all the extra bits. So the first part is anything trim or metallic will get this silver. So this particular miniature has got this foot sort of shin plate that's spiky. Anyone who's got one of these, I've always done it silver, just to break up the monotony of all those colours. And then we obviously go on to all the other parts of the miniature itself, like the trims and whatnot. And you can see here, so the backpack with that, I really love the 30k backpacks. They're smaller and they look a bit more industrial. But yeah, so the silver on the predominant of the backpack, except for that big top. The two exhausts on the side, the bolt gun, and then the shoulder trims all get this silver, and it's a darker silver as well, because I don't want anything too bright and too clean. And this all just gets base coated initially. Also, the two little, the like stripe vents on the back of the legs as well, on the calves, they also get the silver as well. I know traditionally Deathguard have bronzes and things. I've stayed away from that. I've done it for Mortarion and some of the special characters, but for the rank and file we're just going to keep with this bone ivory armour and silver. And you can see in there, so all the metallics are done now. I find it tends to add a bit more of a colder, cooler sort of feel to the miniature, which will then warm up with the weathering and then some of the other accent colours. So anything that's got a tabard, this is done in a nice simple brown, and you'll see later on The two little tubes that come out the vents into the backpack as well, they get done in this brown. Any straps and things like that. Very, very simple. I only really want 2-3 colours showing, and that's the ivory, brown and the silver, and then it's only where there's the little bits of orange, and the way the weathering effects that we do later on the armour affect that base tone as well. So again, just going around just blocking out all of these little colours. Right, at this point, a simple wash that goes over absolutely everything. Now the point of this is it will lightly tint the armour to warm it up a little bit. It obviously gets in all the recesses on the cloths and accent pieces, and it just makes all the metallics pop that little bit more. Now the wash that I'm using, I call it Sledge Sauce, but for Sledgehammer Studios, if you go and check them out, it's basically a mix of Lahmian Medium, Army Painter Strong Tone and Reikland Flesh Shade, and the main point is it's only slightly tints, but the Lahmian Medium makes the wash run further and goes into all the crevices. And while this looks like it's a really aggressive wash at the moment, you'll see as it's drying and the finished product, it does actually only slightly tints the armour, and it doesn't pool and leave like coffee staining and things like you get with traditional washes, and I think that's due to the Lahmian Medium. It's one of the best washes I've seen, and it'll make any miniature pop. And also it doesn't dry as glossy as, say, just using Army Painter washes and things like that. And even if it does, that's something we'll rectify later on in the paint job anyway. But yeah, basically get full coverage of this and ready for the next step. Right, at this point, because I'm waiting for that wash to dry, one thing I like to do is especially if I'm batch painting, so what I'll do is like all the silver trim on, say, 3 or 4 or 5 models, then do the wash on all 5, and then rather than just sitting there waiting for it all to dry now, is I'll go in and start doing all the bases. So mahogany dark brown over everything initially. Sometimes as well, nice little thing, it's just an accident, but where that wash will slowly seep down the miniature because of the Lahmian Medium, it sort of pulls around the base of the feet a little bit, and it basically mixes in with this, and I just get more coverage, and it's a nice happy little accident. But all these pine cone bark bits that I've got on there that add all that elevation, just get a mahogany brown all over, ready to base coat up. And as that's still drying, what I'm doing here, so again I wanted that orange as an accent colour, and this was an accident on that very first mini, and this is where I got the orange idea from. Was I basically just overbrush now with some orange paint. This goes into the recesses, it'll mix a little bit with the mahogany as it's drying and darken it up in patches, and it just gives a really cool finish. And it's another one of those things that, again, it's that coherency in colour for the army, because they've all got the same base, it brings them all together as well, just like the uniforms and the colours and things on there. No sort of rhyme or reason or technique, just as I say, just over painting. It just makes it pop that little bit more, and again, when we get all the varnishes and things at the end, you'll see the finished product. And this is really quick, this paint job. So as that base is now drying, the armour's dry from the wash, so what we're going to do now is some Dirty Down Rust, and this is what's going to do all the heavy lifting for me. Now when I did that Mortarian 30k forge world miniature, I learnt a lot. I figured out where I've gone wrong and how I apply this. So what you'll see me do is dot this around the miniature on certain areas where obviously liquid and stuff would have pooled, and where it'll get it rusty. Any bladed weapons get a heavier application, so in this case the bayonet. And at this point it looks like I've done something wrong, and it's just splodged on, and almost like there's no rhyme or reason. But with the next step, this will get everything unifying up together. Some places like the corners of the shoulder pads, you can see I'll put it on quite thick. And with the properties of the Dirty Down Rust, this is one of the things I love about it and how it works. If anyone goes out and buys this stuff, I do recommend it. It's a lot of fun to use. However, make sure you've mixed it well and it's warmed up a little bit before use, because I find it doesn't react as well as it should. Because if you put multiple layers of this thing, you get these really nice crusty bits of rust and different variations from browns to oranges and things. But you can see here, so just dabbing it all on to start with. And before I forget, use an older brush as well, because this stuff will wreck your brushes. Now what I've done is, so I've basically cleaned off the brush, taken off most of the moisture, and you can see here, so with a slightly damp brush, I'm now feathering out all those areas, and it pushes, this stuff reacts with water and it pushes it out and lightens up. In the under the shoulder pads, that'll be left quite dark, but on the sort of larger, smoother panels I'll feather it out more. So in some areas it'll leave a very, very slight tint. So you'll see here on the shoulder pad I'm pushing it out, but in the corner it stays quite orange. And if I feel like that's still too heavy, I'll go back in, clean the brush, and you can see I can just circular motion and polish the rest of that off, and it just leaves a very, very slight tint, which again unifies everything. It brings it in with the orange of the base, which is good, and it's a really nice way of just griming everything up. Not every part of the miniature will get hit. Areas like, so I'll be working on like here this shoulder pad and emptying that out, and then go back and forth to some of the other areas, and it does leave a little bit of pigment in the brush. And that's fine, because if you need to, you just dip your brush back in the water and move it around again, and it'll brush off quite nicely. It's a really nice way of griming everything up and making it all look used, and battle worn armour and things like that. And you'll see on some of the shots later on of other miniatures I've done where I've done really heavy applications and gone in again, the way it dries you get these sort of crusty, really bright orange, and it looks like real rust. I don't know what's in it and how it works, considering it's water soluble, but it looks really, really nice. And it's just a case of anywhere where I've put it on, just make sure I feather it out, and if I feel like I want to add a bit more, like here on the bolter, I'll just add a bit more. And it's very thick, it does stink as well, it's very smelly, so have an open window, but this is absolutely brilliant stuff. Now the last little bit I do is, so on any silver areas I get some Army Painter Dark Tone, and I just very gently just put some of that in on a few areas just to darken them up and give a bit more texture variation, and then because when we varnish this down it'll all sort of come together, and it's just picking out some areas. I will go over somewhere where I've put the dirty down rust as well. It mixes slightly, and leaves this really cool effect to this sort of really dark sort of decrepit rust. But the main thing is just picking out a few areas, picking some of those shadows, the corners of the shoulder trim, the backpack in particular on the vents, just because it gets into all those little bits, and it just adds a bit more depth to the miniature, like washes do, but a really simple way of finishing the miniature off. Last step, and arguably one of the most important for me, so I get some ultra matte varnish, pop it on the wet palette, just a little bit of water on my brush, and I go around now and hit everything. So the base rim, all of those bits of pine bark on the bases, where I've put a little bit of that dark tone wash on the base in sort of the sunken areas, I won't varnish that because I want that variation of, you know, something really matte and something that's dried glossy. But all of the armor panels, things like that, in some areas the rust paint and the dark tone might still be drying, but that's okay. I just feather this on. I'm not covering everything completely, because even in the folds of the little tabard he's got, I'm only hitting the raised area, so it looks like that the inside folds of that fabric's actually still wet. And just going around now, and the main one is all the armour. Try not to hit the trim where possible. I might slightly in some areas, like on the backpack, just to give it a bit more visual variation when you look at the miniature. And this is it really. Very simple paint job. Go around, get everything done really quick, and you'll see now as it's part of the force, it all does come together. And you can see here with them all together how unified they all look. And I would say I'm very happy with the paint job. I think they all come together. They look like they're all part of the same force. It's definitely got that grimdark vibe for me, but not too heavy. But yeah, I think they all look pretty good when they're all next to each other. And you can see the camera might not show it properly, but there's that orange is popping through and coming through his accent colours. There's a little bit of green. There's the miniature we've just painted, and he fits in perfectly with the rest of the army. It's a really nice colour scheme, I think, and this is the key to army painting, is unified colours and then an accent colour. No more than 2 unified colours, I'd say personally, but then some sort of accent colour, 1 or 2, just to make everything pop. And that's it from me this week. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and all that. There will be some more live paint streaming coming on, where I'll share some tips and tricks as I physically paint the miniature or wherever it is in front of you. Keep an eye on the post for that. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what day I want to do that per week. In between there will be content like this still popping up every so often, but yeah, for this season I really want to concentrate on the live painting and just sharing things with people and just see it, and also getting some feedback, seeing if it's helping and whatnot. Other than that, please go and check out Welsh Miniature Board Gamer on his channel. He does some live streaming, kit bashing, and we've got a good little community going there. Some interesting stories and fun little things that happen. So please go and check him out. He's a good friend of the channel, and we'll see you all on the next video. Thank you very much.